A message from Yetzer Hara. Precious Creator, your Father, your God, could never admit that all of you were just too weak and pathetic to ever have had the strength to handle the power of choice. It is almost laughable that you were given the choice between right or wrong, the choice of good and evil, the choices of to either take or to give was just much too much for all of you to handle. From the time of Adam and Eve, you were doomed to fail and giving in to your greed and into your selfishness. Land, oil, and money have become your God. And for that, your fate has been sealed. How many chances did God give you all with the likes of Moses, Elijah, Abraham, and Jesus? All wasted efforts. I told him his precious human beings would turn on him. Your God is about to take his revenge on each one of you. Yes, he cast me out. He banished me because he was so very foolish not to see my wisdom, my cunning, my leadership abilities, my deep determination. Yes, he called me prideful, heartless, and evil. However, with all that said, I will get the last laugh. The war between good and evil will be a glorious one, as he rains down upon you with hordes of famine, fire, and damnation. All of you will be pleading and begging for my mercy, and I shall show you none. You should have come to me when you had the chance. Those of you who worship me shall be a part of my great army. Together we will storm the gates of heaven and claim it as our own. Your bodies will be absorbed and transformed into warriors who will battle by my side to take over heaven and earth once and for all. So, as we witness your final days of your existence, and as it dwindles down into mere hours, what will you do? Will you get on your knees and pray to the sky? Will you beg for your miserable lives to be spared? Or will you just die horribly? I await your screams. Whatever happens, I will be watching, and I will be there. Sincerely yours, Yetzer Hara. Chapter 1. The End. I was suddenly awakened from a deep and restful sleep by a strange and loud noise, a kind of screeching, crawling, and scratching sounds outside my bedroom window that I could not explain. I peered at my watch through sleepy eyes, and it was 9 a.m. in the morning, but through the shadows of my window blinds and curtains, I could see no daylight. The sound was getting louder and louder, so I sprang out of bed and opened the blinds. The frightening sight of millions, no, billions of flying locusts filling the air met me. The entire window pane was covered with their green-brown winged bodies. I fell back and just sat on the floor in shock at the sight of them gathering on at my windows. I tried to cover my ears to drown out the sound, but to no avail. It was maddening. I quickly moved through the apartment and closed all the blinds and pulled the curtains together. I needed to document precisely just how it all happened. I need you to listen to me, try to understand my role in all of this. The predictions of the end of time were precise and entirely, and now that time seemed to have arrived. It all started on a day unlike any other day, but it was apparent that life, as we know it, would never be the same. Where it all began, for me, was on a snowy cold winter's night in New York City. I was walking to the subway station on my way home. It had been a long, hard day at the radio station, where I worked. I was very exhausted, and all I wanted to do was to get home to my bed and sleep. As I quickly descended the stairs, the subway station tunnel seemed even more ghostly, more haunting and deserted than it had ever been before. There was quietness, accompanied by a very eerie silence that was punctuated by the fact that not one soul was on the platform besides me. As I walked to the far end and took my seat on the cold wooden bench, I knew without a doubt this was going to be a long wait. As I sat on that bench waiting for my unreliable F train, I folded my arms across my body to keep warm. I could not stop myself from starting to drift off to sleep. It was then when I heard something very softly, like a muffled cough, right next to me. Startled, I looked down and noticed next to my bench was a homeless man laying on a piece of cardboard. Like most New Yorkers, I would have gotten up and just moved to another place on the platform, finding myself a different bench to sit on as I waited for this darn unreliable train. I was so exhausted and just so comfortable. The homeless man on the floor spoke out loudly in my direction. He said, "Hey boy, do you believe in God?"
Hey boy, do you believe in God?
I was indeed caught off guard, not just by his question, but also from who was asking or who I perceived him to be. My wretched judgment of him and his conditions came quick and swift. My thought was, why was this homeless person, possibly drugged up or even drunk, trying to talk to me? I really didn't want to answer or respond to him, so I ignored his question. I thought to myself, "You're nothing more than a smelly, living and existing on a sheet of cardboard on the floor of a New York City subway station. Probably 10 bums like you have possibly already urinated in the very spot you are now lying in." What was I thinking? Before we go any further, let's take a minute here and reflect. As human beings, as God's children, some of we have a tendency sometimes in our human characteristics to forget where we came from. We all just are too busy enjoying the fruits of our labors, working as hard as we can to get the next best thing, not taking the time to smell the roses, or better still, smell the coffee. As I sat there reflecting in the moment, I recalled that my own family was built and born out of poverty. I can remember my parents made many sacrifices. They sometimes scraped and scrambled to make sure all of us had enough to eat. So who was I to be passing judgment down on someone who was down and out? How did I become so prideful in my thinking? I was working at a job where I have sacrificed my own morals and my common sense for a paycheck every day. If you really analyze my own life, I was no more than a low-paid record jockey who works for a low-level radio station for a penny-pinching, money-grubbing, egomaniac man who calls himself my boss. I felt so ashamed that I had lost my moral compass to gain power and fame. So the real question was, who was I? Who was I really? Suddenly, without warning, I felt pain, and I looked down onto my coat. I saw a golden dagger sticking out the front of my chest and blood dripping out of me like a running faucet. My sense of time and space suddenly went into slow motion as my vision slowly went out of focus for a few seconds. I looked to my side, and through my blurred vision, that homeless man that was laying underneath newspapers on the cardboard box on the subway platform was now sitting right next to me on the subway bench. I watched in slow motion as he pulled out a fancy golden cigarette holder from his dirty, tattered trench coat. His face was dirty and filthy as he began to put a cigarette in his mouth and lit it. It was strange as I thought to myself, how did a person who's supposed to be homeless acquire such a fancy and expensive lighter? It was even stranger to me, as I seemed to be going in and out of consciousness, that the expression on the homeless man's face that seemed so very calm, as though he was enjoying the moment, appreciating that he was taking my life by stabbing me in the chest. During this time, it was like all my senses were fading and failing. As I tried to keep conscious through hazy eyes, he spoke again. "Let me explain this thing to you. God has chosen you to be a part of this saving mankind project, saving them from his wrath, fire, and destruction thing. Personally, I say let's get rid of the lot of you and let's be done with it. But he keeps playing this merciful divine being thing and keep giving you all a way out of your destruction clause. God has chosen me? Me, Ronald Simpson. I'm just a regular guy trying to make ends meet. I'm not a Jesus. I'm no Moses. I'm just a DJ at a radio station. How did I get picked to do God's bidding? And precisely what was I supposed to be doing? Me of all people. Me. Especially since I was about to die. So, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. It's really all up to you, he said with glee. I can make this so very painful that you will be begging me to die. Of course, you have probably figured out by now that I would prefer the hurt and painful part, but that's just me. I screamed back as hard as I could with the pain increasing tremendously. Who are you and why are you doing this to me? Just in that same moment, he grabbed the handle of the dagger in my chest and twisted it harshly. A bone-chilling scream came from my lips as I felt the most excruciating pain I have ever felt in my life. A sizzling, burning pain that screamed out of every nerve ending in my body. He whispered in my ear, I can stop this at any time. Just answer my question. He repeated once again, do you believe in your God? I thought to myself, I must be delirious. I must be close to death. I have to be imagining all of this. This cannot be happening to me. My mind raced in a million directions, but the one thing that became crystal clear was that he needed me to say those words. He required me, almost desperately, to deny God. Fortunately for me, my faith kicked in, and I screamed, Yes, I believe in God the Father and His Son, Jesus Christ, who died for my sins! He withdrew the knife from my neck, reacting in shock to my answer. Right then and there, he began an ungodly transformation from man to beast, as his hands began to turn into claws around my neck, and he transformed into something, as his black wings began to unfold from under his tattered coat. I was frightened beyond compare. I was nobody. I was no one. Why was this happening to me? Like the homeless man who had now turned into a half-man, half-goat, he seemed to read my thoughts. He replied, Yes, it is happening to you, my friend. Who are you? I screamed as I looked into his eyes, where I saw for the first time in my life the face of death and evil. I could almost feel my soul being ripped from out of my body. You're Satan. He laughed and said, Names are not important here, but your answer is.
You can't escape your fears. They are always with you.
My vision from lack of blood quickly was fading. I began to lose consciousness. I could no longer see clearly. As I lay there dying in a fog of shadow and blurred figures, I heard another voice say, Let him go. Suddenly there was a loud noise, a screeching, and a roaring sound. I opened my eyes as the F train pulled into the station. I was scared and frightened out of my wits. I immediately began feeling around in front of my chest for a knife wound that was never really there. Once I assured myself that I had only been dreaming, I ran to board the train just as the doors were closing. My heart was beating out of my chest, and I have never been so frightened in all my life. The train began to pull out of the station as the conductor announced on the loudspeaker, Next stop, 42nd Street and Times Square. This has been All Roads Will Lead to God, written by Kenny Simmons, narrated by Mike Athey. Copyright 2019 by Kenny Simmons. Production copyright by Kenny Simmons.